What's going on, guys? It's Tom. I'm back with another video. I did post a video because we went to like a Subic Bay hotel and water park, like resort, last week, and it was fun. It's just like 4 days. Basically we're gone for like I think 3 or 4 days, and it's only about a 3-hour drive from where we're at. In Quezon City. Actually, it could be 2.5. It's kind of like 2.5 to 3.5 hours, depending on the traffic each way. But anyway, I might post a little something just talking about the resort more. I sort of just filmed clips from when I was there, but I just piece it together and put it as one 8-minute video because I'm not some big like travel type vlogger like that. I usually just give information videos, as you guys know probably. But I might talk about this place because it's pretty cool. But anyway, on this video, I wanted to talk about just traveling to the Philippines, right? Like just some advice or just some information that you guys might be interested in knowing, right? Um, I'll say this, like coming here, it's obviously a long flight, and I'll just speak for the United States. I was coming from the Midwest, from Chicago. Every time I had come here to visit, which was about 5 times, right? And then, of course, I came here the sixth time, and that was almost 2 years ago, come here to live. So that's 6 flights, 5 round trip flights, and one way flight. I'll just tell you, I mean, you know, it's going to be a long flight. You could break it up, right? Like you could say, oh, I know guys that have taken like 4 legs, to get there, to get here, because each leg is never more than like 7 or 8 hours, right? You know, so as opposed to taking like one long flight and then with maybe one stop flight that's with the layover of like 3 hours or whatever, like what I used to do. Instead of doing that, you know what I mean? Like I actually was taking, for most of the time that I came here, I was taking like, Chicago to Taiwan nonstop. So that's like pretty much like 16 hours. And then the Taiwan to Manila was like 2.5 hours. And there was usually only about a 4-hour layover in Taiwan. That's just the way I did it. If you don't want to be like getting off the plane and, whatever, worrying about your bags and all that, especially if you got check-in bags, then that would be a way that I would recommend. The last time I think I went, when I came here one way, basically, I went through Qatar. So that was broken down a little bit. It was kind of like, instead of one really long flight, there was like, I think one of them was like 12 hours or something like that, and then the other one was 9 hours. So it's sort of like two fairly long flights, instead of like one really long flight and then one real short flight. So I don't know if that was any better for me, like it was okay. But it was also had like an 8 or 9 hour layover at the Qatar airport. So that was, it was okay. I mean, it was a clean airport, nice airport, kind of a large airport. I did a decent amount of walking. And when you're walking with a carry-on bag that's kind of heavy or whatever, that doesn't have wheels, like one of my bags, just get a cart. You know what I mean? Like just get one of those carts. You can get them all over the airport. So don't torture yourself when you come here, because it's kind of a grueling trip. Okay, no matter how you slice it. So just take it easy on yourself. But those are just different things that you can think about. You know what I mean? And obviously, when you're on a long flight, I don't care if it's 8 or 9 hours or whether it's 16 hours, right, nonstop. You really got to get up during the flight and walk around like at least 3 times, if you can. You know what I mean? Just, or, go to the bathroom, and then every time you go to the bathroom, then take the opportunity after that to sort of walk around, walk down the aisles, stretch. Sometimes you could stand near the galley area, by one of the emergency doors there, and just kind of like get out of the way of people. But you could just stretch and, do stuff like that, because It'll help your back and your legs and everything else, because you get really stiff sitting for a long time, like that. Your muscles get really tight, and so it's just something to consider. And then I'll tell you, like, arriving at, I always came through Manila, okay? I never flew into Cebu, so I don't know how that is, or Clark. So flying into Manila, and they've got a pretty decent exchange rate there, I've exchanged money there a couple times on at least a couple of the trips. Because, when you come here, you're going to need Philippine money immediately, because you're going to take a taxi or a grab from the airport, and they're not going to take American dollars. So, you're going to need money. So I would just recommend doing it. I mean, Manila Airport, I got a pretty good exchange rate whenever I used it. So it's. And then as far as taxis go, and this is important, forget about those like private taxis. They're like SUVs or small vans or whatever. And sometimes they'll be those guys, especially if you come out of that airport after a long flight, and you're outside now, and the heat hits you, and you're like, "Damn, man!" It's like walking into a sauna, and you're sort of disoriented. Manila can be disoriented disorienting. When you walk outside. You got your bags and everything. Now you're ready to go and find a taxi. It can be very disorienting. So if you're going to be looking around and you're going to be like like a tourist, an obvious tourist and a deer stuck in the headlights too, And there's going to be, but I think now they can't come up to you now. These guys and girls that are trying to get you into their private taxi, which is going to cost you 4 times what a regular taxi will cost. Like, even if you're going on a 30-minute trip to a hotel, like in Pasay, for example, they're going to charge you like $20 or 1,000 peso when it should be like 300 peso, or something like that in a taxi. Okay? So forget about those private taxis or whatever, those private limo services, or they're not even limos, but just forget about those private services. All right. What I suggest is go, and if you can't find it, usually it used to be around bay number 10, but if you can't find it, just ask one of the security guards or whatever at the airport, one of the airport guys, where the yellow metered taxis are. Okay, because that's what you want to do. Okay, because there's also white taxis that are sort of like across the street. And I remember when I came here to live, right? Just a little bit less than 2 years ago, there was a long line for taxis, man, which I had never experienced here. And I've taken taxis here, 5 times previous, Never had to wait. For some reason, there just was either a shortage of taxis at the airport, or there was just an abundance of people that came in and, needed taxis right at the same time. So I'm like, oh, man. So, I waited. I mean, I had to wait for like an hour or something like that. It was pretty close to an hour, which is ridiculous. I never had to wait that long. Never waited more than like 10 minutes, for a taxi, right? So now there was these white cabs that were kind of just across the street, and their line didn't seem as long, but it was still pretty long. And there was people behind me waiting for the yellow, and they decided, they were Westerners, I think they were Americans, like a couple. And they decided, we're gonna just go there, I'll let you know how it is or something, So they went into the white taxi, and not metered, not, in other words, it's not, they don't give you a slip of paper like they do when you get into a yellow taxi. The airport employee will give you like a slip of paper with all the taxi's information on there. In case there's a problem, you could just call the airport and say, hey, man, this guy's, did this or did that. So they're less likely to scam you, okay? The bottom line is that the yellow taxis are less likely to try and scam you, and they're, more likely to just have the meter on, just run off the meter without you telling them. But if they don't turn the meter on, just tell them. Like when you're driving a little bit and he hasn't turned the meter on, say, sir, please turn the meter on. Uh, because sometimes they won't, like especially the white taxis, and then they'll just want to do a flat rate with you. Well, if you don't know what the rate is supposed to be, right? Like if you're just coming here for the first time, you're not going to know what the rate should be going from point A to point B. So they could just tell you, oh, 400 peso, and it's only 200 peso on the meter, for example, I mean, that can work sometimes if you know what the rate's supposed to be. And if they tell you like, oh, 250 or something, and it's like a 200 meter, and then maybe you're going to tip them also. You know what I mean? Then, yeah, okay. But if you're a newbie, man, just, and really for anyone, I would just tell them to stick with the yellow cab. But back to these people, right, that went into the white, they waited for the white taxi. Well, like, I don't know, it was like 20 minutes later, they came back to my line, which was the yellow cab line. And they said, no, this guy was trying to rip us off. Like he drove like a block, from where he picked them up. And they were just arguing because he wouldn't put the meter on and he was trying to charge too much. So they just got out of the taxi, They said, we're getting out of here, let us out, and they left and they came back to the yellow cab line, Yeah, like I said, just stick with that because they're metered and they keep track of them. The airport people keep track of them and everything, and you're just better off. And then as far as I know some guys will talk about, like, if you're coming here to meet a young lady or a lady, some guys will say, oh, don't have them meet you at the airport or whatever, like, and that's probably a good idea, because the airport is so confusing anyway. Because if someone meets you at the airport, they can't come all the way up to you usually where you're at when you walk out and looking for a taxi. So you're going to have to go get them. Like you're going to have to go down to this staging area where people wait for their relatives or whatever, and then get them and then come back and get a taxi. So it's kind of confusing, and especially if they don't know how things work, because maybe they've never been to the airport before, in Manila. It could be a mess, So I would just say, either just meet her at the hotel that you're going to stay at, or if you're really worried or something, just go to your hotel and then sort of contact her and then say, oh, let's meet here at some restaurant, if you're meeting somebody for the first time. But I'm assuming if you come here to meet somebody, for a woman for the first time, you've already been sort of video chatting with them for hopefully at least 6 months. You know what I mean? Like, so you should have a pretty good idea of who this lady is, right? But anyway, if you want to be safe, then you could certainly do that. You could just go to your hotel first and then say, okay, I'm here. And then, don't tell them where if you're really worried about it. And then just say, oh, let's meet over here. Like they might know what part of the city you're going to be in, but they don't know the hotel, right? And then you can just say, oh, let's meet at this restaurant or, whatever, for lunch or dinner or whatever it is. If you really want to, if you feel like you need to be careful, then you can do that. But otherwise, if you feel pretty good about who this woman is, you could just have them meet you at the hotel too, But anyway, you do what you want, But that's just a little advice. And that's about it. I mean, I just wanted to give you some of the basics about the traveling part. I know there's other stuff like I've done videos about what to bring and what not to bring and stuff like that. And I could maybe do another video on that too, kind of shorten it up a little bit. But that's about it, guys. I just wanted to give you my input on this, and I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. All right, bye-bye.